Hi, good evening. Wherever you are, I appreciate you taking your time to join me here to talk about a topic which we will be beginning our talk in just a minute. And it's going to be, I hope, something unexpected for you. I'm not sure what you think I'm going to talk about, but it's probably going to be a little bit different than what you think. Let me go ahead and introduce myself to those of you who haven't met me before. I am Dr. Felice Gersh. I am a rare breed. I am an integrative OBGYN doctor. What that means is I did a fellowship in integrative medicine at the University of Arizona School of Medicine. And so I just happen to have a much larger toolbox from which to help all of my patients attain and maintain optimal health. I am the medical director of the Integrative Medical Group of Irvine in Irvine, California. For many years, I was an assistant clinical professor of OBGYN at the Keck USC School of Medicine. And currently, I am working with the fellowship in integrative medicine, my alma mater at the University of Arizona School of Medicine, doing lectures, panels, and working on the final exams. I am one of the graders. I really love what I do. And because of that, I want to share all of my knowledge, the knowledge I have gained that really is not commonplace in the medical world. But of course it should be, because what is more important to health than what you eat? Yet medical school today usually give maybe 1 or 2 hours of attention to food, and it is so critical. It was figured out how many years ago? Probably 2000, when Hippocrates said, "Let food be thy medicine," and how right he was. So what we're going to talk about tonight is a topic that is, not really talked about enough, and it's so critical to health. It's all about delicious fiber and how it contributes to fabulous health. When I was a kid, fiber was not talked about, except maybe for old ladies who took some kind of a fiber supplement for constipation. And fiber was thought of as, well, it's some kind of giant piece of roughage that would just push everything down the line in your colon and help you to have regularity and have regular bowel movements. And nobody wanted to talk too much about that either, even though, of course, it's about as natural a function as anything can be, as natural as breathing and drinking water and everything else that we do to stay alive. And every living creature takes in food. It has to. It has to either make food or take in food, because it needs to have a supply of nutrients and energy. And there are always waste products that are produced from natural degradation of cells and food products that we don't completely digest, and we have to get rid of them. We can't store them in our body for our entire lives, and that is what becomes the fecal material, the poop, right? The bowel movement. And in order to have a healthy body, you need to have a healthy functioning digestive tract, and that requires eating fiber. It's really so sad, because if you go back to previous civilizations and generations, like thousands of years ago, or primitive societies, you don't have to go back that far, just areas are not living with the Western style life. They consumed somewhere between 100 and 150 grams, not milligrams, grams of fiber a day. That is what would be considered enormous today. We actually set a goal of 25 grams is what the government suggests, and that is not really nearly enough. We try to aim for at least 50, but that is still not at all what ancient peoples ate, and it really matters for your health, because fiber is food for the civilization within us, that unbelievable and complex civilization called our gut microbiome. So fiber is something that can taste delicious, and it should be part of everyone's diet every day. And I'll talk to you about how can you get fiber and why we must eat it, why we must nurture and care for our little civilization within us that is doing everything to make us healthy and optimally functioning. But without knowing they were there, unfortunately, we have done everything to decimate them. We have starved them. We have poisoned them. We have essentially set like grenades off in them when we've taken antibiotics, which were perhaps not necessary. A lot of antibiotic use has really not been necessary. And something like 70% of all the antibiotic use has been in our feedlot animals. The animals that we consume have been pumped up with antibiotics, and still that is an ongoing process. And why do they give antibiotics to animals? It actually isn't what you think. It's not to prevent infections. That would be treatment. This is just giving them antibiotics. It's to make them get fat. Now, why would you think that antibiotics would make an animal get fat? And then they could take them to market sooner and make more money. Because antibiotics will kill the gut bacteria, the microbiome of those animals. Because every animal that is like us, like a mammal or even a bird, they all have a gut. They all have bacteria. They all have their own microbiome. And those bacteria can be killed by antibiotics. Just think of the word antibiotic, against life. And this is a clue, if they figured out that if you give low doses of antibiotics to animals, that they will get fat, and then based on the weight of the animal, they can sell it and get it to market sooner, that giving antibiotics makes animals get fat, and then we eat them and we get antibiotics. What is that going to do to us? And why would taking antibiotics make someone fat? Clearly, there are no calories in antibiotics. It's because it turns out that this microbiome, this unbelievable complex ecosystem, more complex than the rainforest and anything else that we've ever discovered, that ecosystem actually maintains our metabolic functioning. The gut microbiome that you have actually determines your weight. And the health of that microbiome is critically dependent on you consuming fiber. Isn't this, let me tell you something that when I heard this, it was like so amazing and so beautiful. When a mom breastfeeds a baby, the mom's breast milk has a couple of things going on in it that you would never imagine. It has fiber. There's fiber in breast milk. That's how critical fiber is. There are what are called oligosaccharides in breast milk, designed to feed and nurture the developing microbiome, the bacteria within the intestinal tract, in the colon predominantly, of the infant. That is how critical it is. When a baby is born, it gets smeared when it comes out vaginally with lactobacillus, which populate the maternal vagina on the last month particularly, to smear the baby. And it's not an accident that when a baby is born, its head turns down to actually face the mother's anus, because the bacteria there actually are good for the baby. And as an obstetrician, I just think about it. I feel so terrible that way back when I was doing obstetrics many years ago, they said, we've got to clean this woman off. We've got to kill all her bacteria. So they would swab everywhere with antiseptic betadine solution to kill the bacteria, because we did not know that those bacteria are critical to the developing baby's microbiome, which ultimately regulates the entire metabolic processes of our bodies. It's like we are the shell and they are the control center, and they need to live and be fed, and it's fiber that feeds them. So not only does a mother have breast milk that provides fiber, oligosaccharides, but as well, there's actually a conduit from the mother's colon into the breast milk. So the mom's gut bacteria are actually seeding into her own breast milk. How phenomenal is that? That tells you how critical it is. And also, when you talk about what you eat, to be sure that you buy and eat animals that are not what we call confined feedlot animals. You do not want to eat animals that are full of antibiotics, because those antibiotics are still there and they are going to hurt you. Part of the obesity epidemic that we are now really experiencing worldwide is a combination of many things: environmental toxins and a host of bad choices, but also the antibiotics that are killing our gut microbiome and the lack of sufficient fiber in our diets. So it turns out that fiber is not what we used to think. It's not just roughage that pushes things down. It's not that at all. It's really nurturing and feeding our gut microbiome. So what is this fiber that we must eat? What kinds of foods are fiber? Well, it turns out that some of the foods that we were told not to eat are actually some of the best things for us. What they call like the root vegetables, the starchy vegetable. They say, don't eat those vegetables. They're too starchy. They're going to make you fat. Actually, they make you thin because those fibers, that starch doesn't get well digested by our digestive enzymes. It passes down, it does not turn into sugar, and it goes and it feeds our microbiome. And that's what they do. The microbiome eats the fiber and they ferment it. And it's like an assembly line. It goes from one group of bacteria to the other, and different types of bacteria like different types of fiber. That's why you need to eat across a spectrum of vegetables and a lot of different types of fiber. And it's not just vegetables, it's also fruits and it's also grains. These are the fibers that help to keep our bodies healthy by keeping our microbiomes healthy. As you probably have heard, there's such things as soluble fiber and insoluble fiber. So insoluble fiber are what we also call resistant starch. These are fibers that do not get digested at all by our bodies. It goes straight all the way through to the colon, where they get fermented by this like assembly line of bacteria, and the end products are what are called short chain fatty acids. Now, these short chain fatty acids, there's three of them. There's acetate, which is the most prevalent, there's propionate, and there's butyrate. And they all have overlapping and yet different functions that are critical to our well-being. It turns out that butyrate, this particular short chain fatty acid, remember that is the end product of fermentation of the resistant starch. And I'll tell you in a minute what are resistant starches, so you can eat them. But this butyrate, this amazing product, actually acts as fuel or food to the enterocytes, the lining cells of our colon, to keep them healthy. And in fact, this helps to prevent things like diverticulitis, diverticulosis, which is a precursor, the little pouches that form in the colon, and colon cancer itself. So it turns out that to nurture our own colon cells, that those are called enterocytes, that it requires butyrate, which requires a healthy microbiome. So we cannot kill them with lots of unnecessary antibiotics or chemicals in our food, things like that. And then the fuel, that is the food for the bacteria, the resistant starch fibers. In addition, butyrate does other amazing things. It also helps to regulate our appetite. It actually works through the liver to help keep the liver healthy. And it actually passes out of the colon into our circulation and goes into our brains. And it turns out that butyrate helps to keep us happy. It helps to maintain a happy mood. So eating fiber is actually a treatment for mood disorders like anxiety and depression. How amazing is that? Propionate and acetate are also very critical, particularly for maintaining proper glucose regulation. Proper glucose regulation is essential so that you don't get diabetic, you don't get pre-diabetic, okay? So in order to maintain proper insulin function and glucose regulation, you need to have fiber in your diet. Fiber helps to maintain your appropriate appetite, your weight. They have done, listen to this interesting study. They actually did this with rats and mice, but they've seen it in humans as well. When they were weaning rats from nursing, they gave them a high fiber diet. Then, after they got a little bit older, they gave them a terrible American type diet, lots of crappy fat and lots of sugar. And the rats that had been weaned from nursing their moms onto the fiber when they were very little, they were just being weaned, they turned out to be resistant to the negative effects of the high fat and high sugar diet, and they did not get obese and they did not get diabetes and ill health. The rats that did not get weaned that way, that went straight into a low fiber diet, they became obese and diabetic when they were exposed to what they call the Western diet or the standard American diet with a lot of fat and sugar. So it turns out that if you help a young child, a baby coming off of weaning, well, the baby is being weaned from breastfeeding, that you can actually impact the child's metabolic health for the rest of that child's life by getting fiber and into that child at a very, very, very young age, nurturing the microbiome so that it is healthy and then has more tolerance, which is not what's happening today. As we know, many children eat almost no fiber. They eat tons of processed foods, and they don't even have the right taste buds because they haven't been given healthy fruits and vegetables as young children. But appetites and tastes can change. So if you don't like these things, you say, I can't stand root vegetables like parsnips, beets, rutabagas, turnips, carrots, and you say, I don't like root vegetables, also including things like onions and garlic. You can try, there's so many recipes out there, and hopefully we're going to be giving you some recipes down the road because I'm working with a holistic chef now that we're going to be doing some presentations coming up as a team to help you get recipes so that I don't just say, eat root vegetables and then you don't know what the heck to do about it. We're going to give you help. We're going to give you recipes that you will love and your family will love as well. So there's the resistant starch. You can also get resistant starch by buying potato starch, not potato flour, potato starch. And starting very lightly, like a teaspoon in an 8-ounce glass, working your way up to, say, 2 tablespoons in 8 to 10 ounce glass of water, and drinking that twice a day. That is pure resistant starch. That is purely food for your gut microbiome. And that will really work really well to help you to reconstitute your microbiome and make it healthy. Then in addition to the fiber we just talked about, the resistant starch, the insoluble fiber, we have the soluble fiber, things like oats, right? And that, as you probably have heard, oatmeal, and this also includes things like barley, shiitake mushrooms, the soluble fiber, it's often very viscous and it kind of turns into sort of a mush if you put it in water. That actually is wonderful for helping gut motility. That will help you with constipation. Whereas the insoluble fibers are primarily, but it will help as well, but it's primarily to nurture your microbiome. The soluble fibers really help by getting your muscular system and the neurological system, we call the enteric nervous system of the intestinal tract, functioning properly. And it also helps to lower your cholesterol. Isn't that amazing? What it does is these soluble fibers, like the beta glucans, they bind with cholesterol in your colon and take it out with the stool. So you can actually lower your cholesterol amazingly by eating soluble fibers like barley, make sure it's organic, and oats and shiitake mushrooms. They really work. Then there are the pectins, which is another form of soluble fiber, and that includes things like the grape covers, and in addition, cherries are very good. And as well, let me take a look here. Oh yes, I almost forgot. Citrus fruits and the cherry skins and grapes. I had to check my notes. So they are part of the world of pectins. And those pectins are really amazing for regulating your appetite and blood glucose levels. So if you eat foods which have pectins, they will really be great for your metabolic health. So fiber for everything, wonderful fiber. And I want you to eat, this is going to sound like a lot, 5 cups of vegetables a day, of all sorts, above ground, below ground, roots, green leafies, because they all have different types of fiber. And all of these fibers are wonderful for all the functions of your gut. In addition, I want you to eat 2 fruits a day. So I want you to eat 2 fruits, make them varied, different kinds of fruits, and 5 to 6 cups of vegetables every single day. You got to start with breakfast. Don't think that breakfast is a special kind of food. In fact, one of my children, I won't name which one, is now going on a very high vegetable diet, and I'm very, very proud of her. And she is having what she is calling her breakfast salads. And I saw it looked amazing. A big, beautiful bowl of all sorts of vegetables and avocados and some fruit mixed in. And it was very filling, had very few calories and tons of fiber. It's really a whole world now. The whole incredible world of feeding our microbiome, those amazing, beautiful creatures that live within us that do such wonderful, wonderful things for us. So what I want you to do is go to a farmer's market and walk around and look at vegetables that you've never seen before, and just ask, the person who's selling them, what can you do with this vegetable, until we get back to you and teach you how to cook them. And go online and look for recipes for beets and for turnips and for rutabagas. I want to give you one more secret about potatoes. You've been told potatoes are bad for you. They're too sugary, but actually not. If you get the little potatoes, the ones that are little waxy, red, green, not green, sorry, purple, not that, don't get the green one. So you get purple, red, the little brown ones. Those are wonderful if you cook them till they're just barely soft, and then you refrigerate them. The cold actually reconstitute the fibers in the potatoes and makes them into resistant starch. You then serve them with a vinaigrette, some vinegar and oil and spices, and you will have no calories because none of that can be digested by yourself, but you will get wonderful food for your gut microbiome. So I want you to fall in love with fiber. Don't think of it the way your grandma thought of it, is like, buying some like powdered tree bark and just kind of consuming it because you were constipated. That is not what fiber is about. Fiber is about loving your food, loving your gut, loving yourself. So thank you so much. And I can take questions. You have a way of texting me your questions, and I will come back next month. I will set a date. I don't have my date right now, but I will be back and I will answer your questions. So please feel free. And if we can ever serve you, I just want to let you know I have a wonderful integrative practice here in Irvine, California. I work with two wonderful naturopaths who you may have met because they have done their own shows on Zubia, Dr. Dana Kawada and Dr. Ariana Polakos, and as well our wonderful fitness instructor, Bob Teigenhoff. So we've all done shows here on Zubia. We're all here to help you. If you're in the neighborhood or you want to fly out and come and see us, this is what we do. We want to help everyone to have the best possible life, happy, healthy, and joyous. So have a wonderful evening, and I hope to see you next month.